usually we start these programs with some kind of hilarious reference to something or just messing around, Phil. But just before we started recording this afternoon, some sad news from the world. Matt King passing away at a very young age. You got to know when you edited his book. Tell us more about him.
Yeah, it's devastating news. The word tragic is used, and so it should be at this time. You know, everybody that you know of is suffering somewhere along the line, but Matt was a really, truly heroic, inspiring figure, and his loss will affect a lot of people, because one of the things you leave in life is the impression you make on other people and how you can help them. And Matt's is an amazing story. And you'd think for all the wrong reasons. He was a vivacious young kid. He was very good at rugby union and rugby league, got signed by London Broncos, played in their academy team, and in the very first game, with his first touch of the ball, his neck was snapped. Became a paraplegic, wouldn't give in, ended up running the New York Marathon, mountain climbing, was awarded the OBE when he came to decide to do his book, which for me was a wonderful process of just getting to know him and how inspiring that he was. And, you know, Alex Ferguson volunteered to write the foreword, which again, I think in terms of the profile of rugby league, you know, that wouldn't happen very often, but clearly his story touched way beyond rugby league. And again, you know, he painted and he ended up giving inspirational talks to the staff of the NHS that had helped him recover, and got married, had 2 kids, you know, all of the things that people kept telling him he couldn't do and wouldn't be able to do. And sadly went into hospital around about Christmas time and suffered a heart attack this morning, and is no longer with us. 33 years old. He's done more in those 33 years than any of us will ever do, I think, in our lifetime. So just one of the people that when you come across them can do nothing other than inspire you. Because the one thing you say is, well, how would I cope with something like that? And the answer for most of us is we wouldn't. We'd cry. And we'd bemoan our fate. And he never did. He always said, right, well, what can I do? Not what now can't I do? Remained close friends with people like Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook, who was on the field the day it happened. Hugely well thought of throughout London and the South Rugby League circles. Just a, you know, somebody who didn't suffer fools because of everything he'd gone through. You knew you had to be on your game when he spoke to him, and if you wanted to change a passage of his book, you had to really justify it. We used to have some fantastic chats, and he used to say that you know, because he couldn't travel as easily as most would, that we'd actually only met each other once through the whole process of writing the book, but we felt like we really got under the skin of each other because of the really honest and raw conversations we used to have. And some of the stuff you have to leave out inevitably of a book, and he'd go, oh, you can't leave that out, that's only, we go, no, actually you've told that story 3 times, but it's the better one is where you're getting drunk on a ski resort and all that kind of thing. And we launched his book at Wembley. The RFL were kind enough to allow him into the Great Hall there when the Challenge Cup final was on. And he had made a lot more friends with just his demeanour. A wonderful, wonderful man, and a lot of people will miss him. And we always say it, don't we? Rugby League should do something to make sure that his name is commemorated. But there aren't too many people that get the OBE. He didn't get it for playing; he got it for the inspirational guy that he was. In the condition that he was in, and we should never forget him. He was my life was enriched by coming across him, and heaven knows how many other people's were.
Well, this is the part where we now have to segue from talking about something real to our, you know, pretend world of rugby league, and you know, results aren't important and whatever. And fixtures are out. We've got the Championship and League One coming back, streaming, which is going to cost some clubs some money. We'll talk about that more with our guest later. I actually had a couple of tweets coming earlier. Paul was wondering why all the clubs weren't in some kind of coordinated approach to the Magic Weekend fixtures coming out earlier today. You have to ask Super League about that. And Tummy24. Do you think the Super League and the IFL could do with getting BT Sport on board and getting more matches on TV? The thing that always worries me about leaving Sky, and I know people don't like Sky or whatever, is the Champions League football's on BT. I don't have BT. I couldn't tell you when the Champions League fixtures are on. Not that I was a big viewer of it anyway, but I think you have to be careful what you wish for at times like these. I know people were upset that Sky didn't show the hacker and the pre-match stuff from the All-Stars game at the weekend. I don't know what people want and expect at times, but we do get it better than a lot of other sports. So be careful what you wish for. We do need more rugby league on TV though. Obviously.
I think the first thing is we clearly are testing the streaming waters with friendlies now being available at a fiver a throw. It will be very interesting to see how many people take up that offer. I think the other thing is you're making an assumption there that BT are waiting for a sport like ours. They may not be. I think you're also right about the marginalisation of an audience. What have you built up over 26 years with Sky is a core audience. To move to BT, if they wanted you, you'd effectively be starting that again. You'd be asking all of those who subscribe to Sky to perhaps take out either a second subscription or cancel the one that they had. It's not as easy as perhaps somebody else is in the market they might be interested. I think the other thing about the Maori hacker is, again, we've got to be realistic about who we are and what we are. It costs an absolute fortune to get to come into a satellite. Sky will come in at the moment the game kicks off and will leave the moment the game ends, so that they don't have to pay extortionate satellite hosting fees. And the truth is, because there won't have been 100,000 people watching that game, it'll have been those of us who love rugby league, and we haven't seen the figures yet, but I'd be very surprised if it's over 20,000. 25 maybe. It doesn't justify the cost. And the other great thing is, if you integrate it with social media, you could have seen that hacker. All of the people who were complaining they didn't see it knew it was brilliant because they'd seen it on Twitter saying how brilliant. You have to make allowances. We have to know who we are and where we sit in the pecking order. So I think we are going to see a lot more use of streaming up until sort of May time, which is a month later than had originally been hoped for, with games being played behind closed doors. I think the first weekend you've got something like 48 games you can watch that have all been integrated into. You can watch them all if you want your eyes to go square. But great. Let's see what kind of reaction that has. I think the other thing about did we make the most of announcing Magic Weekend? It's so far away this year, we'll have a chance to re-promote it. What it shows you is when there isn't coordination between two different bodies, it's very hard to get a message out there. But all the Super League fixtures will be out on Sunday, and we can all complain about them then.
Just touching on the streaming again, $4.95 seems to be, or whatever it is, just short of a fiver, seems to be the general price for a fixture. I saw people moaning, which spurred me into action on social media last week. Oh, it should be free. No, it can't be free because you've got to pay for this product. I don't know how they came up with the pricing. I'm sure they haven't just plucked it out of thin air, but you can't compare the cost of a weekend of Championship and League One action or whatever to what the NRL costs, because Watch NRL are taking feeds from whichever the host broadcasters are in Australia, not having to do anything necessarily. We, our league, I say we, as in I don't work for them, we in this country, have to do everything. Cameras, graphics, sound, commentators. That's all the cost. We'll ask later how much it's costing the clubs and how much they hope to get back, but it's not. I'm not saying it's expensive necessarily, but it's not cheap, especially if you're doing every single game. So, and we're not. I saw Rangers in Scotland were, I think, charging a tenner for their stream at the weekend, but they also had Clive Tilsley on board. So you've got an experienced commentator. They've got the full studio. They've got a host. They've got this and the other. That costs money, but also they've got a big fan base to pay tenner at a time at. Ice hockey clubs charging 15 quid for a stream. Scottish lower league teams charging anywhere between £5 and 15 quid. You've got to see it not as comparing it to Sky for a month, or the people who say, oh, Netflix is cheaper than the BBC. You're not comparing like with like. You're paying, in a sense, to go to a game. You know, it wouldn't cost you a fiver to go watch Leeds versus Huddersfield in a friendly. You might not want to go to Leeds versus Huddersfield in a friendly, but at least you can watch it for a fiver, and it's it's cheaper than going.
Yeah, and I think we've seen some great French rugby league as well that's been on YouTube. You know, and the netball has started, and some of that's on YouTube. And expectations are going to have to change. If you want the full Sky production, you will be paying a hell of a lot more than a fiver. So it will be interesting to see how it goes. They clearly are developing their own lines of revenue. We don't know what's going to happen with Sky. I still think the most likely outcome of all of these current negotiations is, instead of an 8-year deal, we'll be looking at maybe a 2-year deal maximum, because the broadcast landscape's changing for Sky as well, as much as its subscribers. I think we'll get an amount of money that reflects a lower amount of time in that deal, enough to give security to the clubs to produce the best product that they can. And again, I just think there is a reason to be optimistic at the moment, in that we are getting some dates in calendars that look like they may happen. I think the World Cup issued a cautiously optimistic statement yesterday on the back of the roadmap out of lockdown. And that's the best you can hope for. And really, if after a year of not really seeing any games, you're worried about who your team plays twice, or where the loot fixtures fit, or who you've got a magic weekend, forget it. We've gone past all of that.
It's not my place to say anything, but I understand there will be there's some good news coming up in the world of broadcasting and rugby league, but that's about all I can say at the minute. Let's go to our first guest. If I listed his clubs, we'd run out of time on Zoom quicker than you can say Jack Robinson. That's not the word, is it? That's not the phrase. It's been a long day.
He used to be the chairman of
Wigan. Yeah.
One of the clubs our guests played for.
Indeed, it is, of course, the former Wakefield Trinity fullback, and Leeds, and Warrington, Gold Coast Titans, Bradford, London, Castleford. We don't like to talk about that. It's Richard Mathers. Well, pleased to say, joining us for the first time. I think last time he was on the show was back at the end of 2019. Everything seems to have merged into one since then, back when we were at the in our studios in North Leeds, but he's back via the magic of Zoom. Please say Richard Mathers joins us. Richard, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me back. Just reflecting on the last time that was on, and what a strange and different world we are in at the minute. But no, thank you for asking. All good this, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think it's been a tough old period for everyone, but personally, fine, thank you.
Yeah, I think everyone's looking forward to whatever normal is on the horizon. Let's talk about rugby league. People want us to talk about what's going on the field. There's nothing of that at the moment, but the big news involving clubs last week was your former club, Warrington, Steve Price, leaving at the end of the season. What did you make of that news, and who do you think will be replacing him there at the Halliwell Jones?
Yeah, if I'm being 100% honest, it wasn't a big surprise. I think he'd signed only an additional 1-year contract, or it wasn't a multi-year contract as normal contracts are. Obviously he's got a young family that are based over here, and if I'm being 100% honest, it's probably the right move for both clubs. I class Steve as a friend. I think he's a very good coach. But whatever, they've got the unwanted moniker around the neck of not winning the grand final. With the amount of money they spend on the squad, it was always going to be under pressure. I think coupled with the brand of rugby that they played last year, wasn't Warrington-esque. So I think I certainly think, from what I understand, it was a mutual decision made in the right spirit, to give sort of both parties the ample opportunity to look for options elsewhere. but yeah, I think it'll be a big year for Steve, and the works on how well is thought of by the Warrington players and the club. To answer your second question, there's only one man in my mind who Warrington should go all out for is Sean Wayne. I think, and Warrington's my club. I've got a lot of feelings for Warrington, but if you're being honest and you look at outside in, you wouldn't associate Warrington as a team. They're a team full of superstars, but then and they've won the odd Challenge Cup. But for the size and amount of that squad assembled, I think it's underachieved, fair to say, and that's being brutally honest. To back up the Sean Wayne argument, I think he craves everything that Warrington need. He is tough, he's relentless, but above all that, he gives the kids a chance, he gives the kids a pathway. And I think if there's a criticism of Warrington, of the youth system, there's not enough of the academy players given a chance, or they have a very limited shelf life. Whereas if you look at the legacy Sean Wayne not only brought when he was in charge, but the legacy that is living on now under Adrian Lamb's tutorage, I think there are the reasons, plain and simply, why Sean Wayne's the number one choice. I think it demands standards, but I think he works from top to bottom with the kids, and is willing to give the young kids, if they deserve a chance, rather than sometimes going down the route of shiny new expensive signings just to appease fans.
I think the important thing tonight is that you've greatly increased the handsome quotient on the podcast tonight. It's good to see you. Putting us to shame again. Just on the Warrington issue, and we can talk wider about change, because I know that that's something that's very important to you, and something you've always embraced as well, not only personally but in your professional life. It's an interesting time for Warrington. They've got this monkey on their back that they can't shake, that probably more pressure than any other team, because it's always brought up that it's 1955 since they last won the title. But they're in a transition. If you look at the squad now, there are some tough decisions that are going to need to be made about players that are at the end of their contracts or are at the older end. Whoever comes in is going to have a really big job to manage that in ordinary circumstances without the weight of what they need to achieve on the back of it. So I'm going to throw two other names at you just to see if you think they would fit.
I know one of them.
One of them is an obvious name, and he'll be in the frame, and that is Lee Briers, who clearly has done his apprenticeship there, knows the club inside out, knows the youth system there, and obviously will be itching for the chance to play a certain way and do things his own way. And you know him really, really well. Is his time now? That would be the first one. The other one is his father played for the club, and his reputation is such that if money is no object, which it never has been for Simon Moran, he could be the ideal bloke, because he's got all the characteristics you've just mentioned with Sean Wayne. But he's actually also got a link to the Warrington club, and that would be Sean Edwards. If he could be tempted back from what he's doing with French Rugby Union at the moment, the record he's had everywhere he's been as a coach, might he be a candidate?
Yeah, I think touching on Lee Briers, firstly, Phil, I think he is very well thought of at the club. Both the thing with Lee is he was a mercurial player. It was a rat bag off the field. But the thing with Lee is, and the thing that's impressed me more with Lee and seeing his development over the last 4 or 5 years, is his transition to being a coach. So he's not one of the boys anymore He's invested heavily in his own development, and he's got unbelievable views on the game. I think he'd be a great choice. He was heavily involved in the youth side, and he's quite clearly got a strong affinity with the club and the fans. Counter that argument would be the need success. Their next appointment, they need pretty much to guarantee success. Take my friendship away from Lee. I don't think he gives them that guaranteed bang for the buck of we need to win a grand final. I just don't think he's quite ready. I think he's a fantastic assistant. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. I think he's ready to be a head coach. I don't think it's fair to put the pressure on him from Simon, from Carl, from the board, because whoever's the next appointment at Warrington has got one clear mandate, is to win that grand final. And I think it's probably a bit of too much of a burden to put on Lee's shoulders at this minute. Sean Edwards is... Lee Breers wasn't the one I was going to pick, and Sean Edwards wasn't the one I'm going to pick. And I thought you were going to throw Brian McDermott in there.
Well, if you want a winner, nobody finer.
No, he'd be. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a technical issue. Brian McDermott would be a great choice as a winner. He's free, barring any sackings and poaching this year, but is a proven winner, as we know. Sean Edwards, I'm not as convinced, Phil. 2 reasons. I think his rugby league career doesn't need any justification, but I just think he's been out of the game too long. I've been retired 5 years now, and I go watch some games at Edeling. I'm thinking I'm way off. I spoke to Rich Hagar yesterday on the phone regarding I had a catch up and some of the things they're doing in pre-season. And considering I only retired 4 or 5 years ago, you're a long time sort of out of the systems. And while he's done an unbelievable job wherever he's been, whether it be Wasps, Wales, the British and Irish Lions, and now at France, twofold. I think one, he's probably been out of the game too long. And quite simply, Simon's got deep pockets, but I don't think they're that deep to tempt him away from the south of France as defence coach. Phil, what's your thoughts on Brian McDermott as a choice?
I'd pick him anytime you want a team to win. I think he's got something about him, you call it an aura if you like, that gets the best out of players. He's got the ability to change a game plan to suit opponents. He's got a really strict disciplinary process through training. And I think I'm not privileged enough to have been on the inside at Warrington to know what that tiny missing ingredient is. They're not far away from sweeping everything every year, but something is missing at the end of it when it matters the most. And that's what he can bring, that ruthlessness. He's not tied to selection favoritism. He genuinely has picked on form every time he's needed to. And even players who fall out with him will do the best for him. So actually all the ingredients Warrington need are there. But he is a controversial figure. If he doesn't think the club's been door of Simon Moran saying you're wasting your money, or I don't want that guy, or get rid of that bloke. And maybe that's what they need. That was the thing about transition, that it's a very difficult thing to manage, and he's done it.
But don't forget Tony Smith did that when he walked in the door at Warrington. Had them conversations. I think if it's delivered in the right way with the right intentions, I think it can only be a benefit. It'd be interesting. I'm like we all are. I'm really looking forward to the season and start. But just sort of finally touching on Warrington, I genuinely feel it could go either way. Gareth Widdop needs to produce. You know, I genuinely think they could go either way in terms of sending Steve out and obviously winning the elusive grand final, or if Widdop and Austin don't combine and get that, basically play the same brand of rugby that they played last year, I think they could be in trouble.
Just on Steve Price, before we move on to any other topic, you say it can go one of two ways. Do you honestly think he'll see out the season? Because the other side of looking at it is, from a player's point of view, makes it very, very difficult if you know that the guy you're trying to impress week in, week out isn't going to be there. If your contract's up for renewal and, you know, you're either a favourite or not, you're going to get picked or not, the guy's not going to be there. There's a ready-made excuse if players want to use it. And I mean, we saw Tony Smith at Leeds. Similar scenario was announced in 2007, just before the season kicked off, that he'd be joining England. And the last game that he was in charge of, they won a grand final. So it can work to your advantage. I've got this, I don't know, maybe erroneous feeling that Steve's only got 6 weeks, and if Warrington aren't producing at the beginning of the season, in the knowledge that he's already going, that process might be hastened.
Yeah, I think that's more. I think that if that scenario pans out, Phil, that's more a reflection of the culture of the group than Steve. So if they're using that ready-made excuse, if you like, that is going. You know, we'll see the back of him in 2022. In my mind, that's a more a reflection of the culture of the group. What you've also got to factor in is the financial implications, and you know, it's probably obviously on the back of the year we've had with COVID, with the amount of money Warrington, Leeds, everybody's lost to pay a coach out. You know, 6 weeks into a season, you've got to factor in that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of variables. I'd like to think the core leadership group would do it and keep them standards. I think with the coaching staff of Price, Henderson, Breers, Adi Gardner, you know, there'll be no stone left unturned in their preparation. I'd be disappointed if their results didn't reflect that, because then that, to me personally, would be more a reflection on the team's culture.
You mentioned there a few moments ago about, you know, yourself being out of the game for 4 or 5 years in from a playing perspective, and how things have moved on from there. Just in terms of when you make that transition, and I'm thinking about the stories about Sam Burgess in Australia, and not necessarily talking about his situation in detail, but how difficult is that transition, knowing you're going from something you've done all your life on the field to that almost going back into civilian life?
Yeah, no, it's a fair and pertinent question. I think if you don't have a clear plan and you're sort of in free fall, it can be very dangerous. I can only speak from my own experience. Obviously, I had 2 serious knee injuries quite early. And if I'm sort of perfectly honest, since I left Wakefield, or the last 6 months at Wakefield to when I finished at Bradford, I knew my time was finite. So I sort of came to terms with, you know, it's not going to last forever, and put plans in place. What people struggle with, and I've got friends who are going through it at the minute, and who are still, you know, going through it at the minute and have gone through it, is the loss of identity. Because no matter what you do from the day you retire, we were lucky enough to live our dreams from the age of 16, 17, 18. And your loss of identity, you're no longer Richie Mathers, the rugby player. You know, you Richie Mathers, you work for Goodyear. And it's some people really, really struggle with the loss of identity of, you know, walking and somebody asking for your autograph or so on. So I think that is a big challenge. I think not having the plan, and also as well is structure to your working week, because you're told what to do, where to be, what to eat. And it sounds, you laugh at it, but it's all you've known since you've left school. So it's sad, we won't go into too much detail with the Sam piece, but it can real sort of spiral out of control quite quickly. But I very much put it down to the loss of identity, because you're not Richard Mathers, you're not Sam Burgess as people remember you.
Now would be a very good time to talk about influences. And I know that somebody who was very close to you, helped you a lot, celebrating the anniversary of his passing. It's 10 years since we lost Clive Gott. I know he still means a lot to you, and some of the practices that he gave you that have helped in your transition. I think we're all grieving the news of Matt King's passing as well tonight. And again, we'll pay a more fulsome tribute to him, but an inspirational character. People won't know Clive and what he did, but he clearly left his mark on you in a very significant way, an age where you relished and needed that guidance. Yeah,
absolutely. So Clive Gott passed away 10 years ago yesterday. And he came into all our lives as academy players. And when you think about it, and I was thinking about it when I was walking the dog yesterday, what an unbelievable foresight and forward thinking by Gary Hetherington and Darryl Powell to have Clive come in and speak to us. So people who don't know, Clive was a life coach. I wouldn't go as far as a psychologist, but he came in to speak to, obviously Leeds recognised that we had a pretty talented group of young players. But it wasn't just about the training, the playing, the weights. It was more about the shaping of the person. Some players, Lee Smith, fell asleep at the back. But my relationship with Clive really blossomed. So, and I'll give you the story. So I was lucky enough, I captained Leeds, Yorkshire and England all the way through as a schoolboy. The next big thing, if you like, to put it, in a modest way. But my first year at the Rhinos, I was like, I'm way out of my depth. I didn't play in the academy grand final. Got left out of that, and I'm thinking I'm supposed to be the next big thing, kind of thing. So it was over the course of the start of the second pre-season that Clive came in, and I sort of pulled him to one side and said, Clive, oh, sorry, I've lost you there. Can I have a chat? Can I have some, he did his presentation to all 30 of us. And he said, yeah. He said, come over to Tadcaster where he lived on Friday on your day off, and we'll have a chat. So we, it's amazing. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it now. So he's saying, well, there's 30 kids exactly the same as you, all talented. What are you going to do different to make yourself stand out? So what he made me do was, which was bonkers at the time, he made me write a letter to myself. So he said, write your wildest dreams that you want to achieve in 12 months. Crazy as you want, whatever you want to do. So I wrote, I wanted to play 3 first-team games. I was 17 at the time. I wanted to play 3 first-team games. I wanted to pass my driving test. I wanted to go to holiday to Mexico. I wanted to save £5,000. I wanted to buy my first house. He made me sign it and date it, and I give it to him. Completely forgot about it. Saw him again. Saw him throughout the year to the day the letter came through the door. Opened it. I'd made 9 first-team appearances. I'd been to Dominican Republic and Mexico, passed my driving test, save the amount of money we'd said, and got my first house. And it's not about the monetary things. It was the tools to make me different, to make me realise that I needed to go a bit extra and not just rely on talent alone. So I made a conscious effort of being the first in, last out, the most enthusiastic. It was back in the days of Majestics on a Thursday night where £10 in and drink all you can. Knocked that on the head and made some real sacrifices. And yeah, to this day, I've still got his MP3 on my phone, and I listen to it every anniversary. So I'm sorry, I get a bit emotional, but yeah, it was a special man, Clive.
And including in all of that is change and the things that you need to do to change your life. And I think you're one of these people that live by the maxim that if you always do what you've always done, things will always be what they've always been. And you made some really people would have shied away from, not least going and playing in the NRL. And I know now you're doing charity stuff that normally you would have said, what the hell am I doing jumping into Roundy Park Lake at 7 a.m?
Well, it was cold.
I can't imagine. But you've always had change at the forefront of what you've done. You've never been frightened to test yourself.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair comment, and you know, I think it twofold really. You know, documented lost my mum early, and had a real, and he's sat there, so I don't want to embarrass him, but you know, really close relationship with my dad. You know, obviously pre my mum passing, but even more so when my mum passed, and I think it's always been driven by that as a sounding board. So to the Gold Coast scenario, I was never going to go to go. I think we spoke about it before, but I went over to have a few days with my dad in Spain, and he said to me, he said, look, it's your career, you know, it's you do what you want. He said, but you'll get to 30-year-old, you'll be married, you'll have children. He said, you'll always wonder what if. So that's what brought that about. And I think I've always been one of them. I've never been impatient, Phil, but I've always thought, well, am I getting best out of myself? You know, like, you know, am I testing myself in the right way? And it's not that I get bored easy, but it's more of a challenge of what else can I do different. So, like, you know, when I retired at Bradford, the welfare role at Warrington were massively grateful at the time, but it wasn't. It wasn't forever, and I knew that it was a stepping stone to able to get into further opportunities, and then sort of quickly realised change again, inevitable. You know, that the relationships I built from the commercial side of the business really, you know, fitted where I wanted to go from a career path. And I guess the biggest post rugby, you know, and I'm really proud of it, and I say it unashamedly, was coming out of the game and going and working for Goodyear as a blue chip company. Was a massive leap of faith from them, but obviously must have saw something in me. But to then go and do something, because I know rugby inside out, you know, coaching or doing, you know, comfortable doing these things, but that change of going to a completely different industry of rubber and tires, and you know, but looking back, it was one of the best things I've done, because it, you know, it sort of tested your skill set, and it challenged you. Like with the first 3 months, I'm like, what are you doing? You could have stayed playing golf and taking customers out on corporate days. But the actual change of environment, but also change of rugby league. And I'll always be indebted to it. As you know, I mean, you were a long-time friends, Phil. It'll always be a big part of my life. But we're also important to make the change to see actually what's out there in the big wide world. And so far, so good.
I'm going to take you back into the world of rugby league for my final question. We're coming up to the time now where players you would have played with and against are becoming eligible for things like Hall of Fames. I always think it's harder for the modern day player because we see every single minute of every game somehow. So we can judge you based on everything, whereas players from the past, it's just bits of videotape, and we're not too sure how great they were.
I thought you were just about to announce me that I'm going in the Hall of Fame. You can't do that to me.
I don't have enough. I don't have any power.
Go on, sorry.
That's okay. But of the players you've played with and against, who do you think will be the ones who will be remembered for the longest time going forward?
Well, quickly, before I answer that one, tell you when you know you're old, when Adam Milner's getting a testimonial. I saw it on social media, and I remember rooming with him in France when I just joined Castleford, and I saw he was having a testimonial this year, and I'm like, goodness me, you're like a dinosaur. Out of the players I've played with, it's a tough one. I think you can't look past Danny Maguire for what he did for Leeds, Super League tries, and I think Jamie Peacock, unbelievable. Chris Radlinski was phenomenal. I'm trying to obviously you can't go too far back in terms of Ellery Hanley, who was a massive hero of mine. People like James Roby, he's unsung hero who's done it all for St Helens. So I think it's a tough one in terms of Hall of Fame, and it's one of them where it won't be probably till another 10 years that you actually really, really appreciate what them players were. Gary Connolly, what a player he was, so it's a tough one.
I know we haven't got long left, but I know you are a student of the game in the truest sense of the word. And we talked about change, and things have got to change. Nobody could have predicted what the sport would have to go through, what life would have to go through. But almost it's a timely reminder that, again, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always be what you always are.
Absolutely.
And this is an ideal opportunity for the sport to be a bit different, to truly be innovative when it often says that it is and isn't. So in like the 4 or 5 minutes that are remaining, what are a couple of things that you'd like to see happen as we move forward?
Can we extend it? No, I think first up, I think the introduction of 18 reserves and first team, the old days, and I hear some horror stories of clubs scrapping academies due to cost. It's frightening. Well, all you're going to end up doing is bringing marquee over the hill players in to replace it. I think we need a unified, independent committee, a board, with to govern the game. I think which I'm sure you've touched on it before with on last week's episode with Robert Elston, but from whatever good or bad he didn't stand a chance because he had 12 egos fighting against him and 12 self-interest, 12 clubs that had self-interest, which you can understand because Michael Carter's needs are different to Ian Lenihan's needs and so on. So I think it needs an independent board that maybe bridges the gap between the governance of the RFL and Super League. And the bugbear is is getting the message out there. For I bought the Sunday papers. I won't tell you which ones, but they were wall to wall of rugby union. All the coverage we need is, we need allies in the right places to spread the word. And I guess finally, I think on a positive, I think we need to carry on championing being different and innovative, and putting on the match day experience and getting kids there, and the fantastic work with the PDRL and the women's and ladies competition that we've got. I think all those things that add to our sport. I guess the worry and the pressing issue is the Sky deal. Reduced Sky deal or no Sky deal is catastrophic. But then do we look at online streaming? Do we look at Netflix? Do we look at why not be bold? If you've seen the Leeds United behind the scenes documentary, can you imagine seeing that at any given club, Lead to Leeds to Wigan? The audience and the coverage and exposure it gives to players would be unbelievable. But to round it up, and not to give you an answer, I just think it needs a change of thinking and changing of the old guard of we've always done it this way, and self-interest, because it's always going to hold it back by it's all about my club and this, it needs, I don't know if the right word is an independent body, or I don't know what the NFL model is, like a commissioner, if you like, but while there's 12 votes in the format that it's in, it's just never going to work, because there's 12 different budgets, there's 12 different spends of salary cap, there's TV money. And it pains me to say it because I want it to be successful, as Phil, me and you have spoke for hours and hours and hours on it. But there's going to have to be some concessions and a little bit of swallowing pride. And finally, it's not about next year. It's not about 2023. It's the long term of the game. Community games and the community games, both for boys and girls, and participation levels, and driving that. How we get there, we ain't got enough time. But yeah, it is a tough one. It really, really is. But while it's self-interest, we're never going to progress.
Well, I'm putting you forward as the commissioner with the experience you're gaining at the moment.
You reckon?
Yeah, you could do it.
I don't know if I could argue. I don't know if I could argue with 12 chairman.
Richard Mathers there, who has rebranded himself post-career. Richie as a player. Richard now, he's got a proper job in the real world. I do think one day I'm going to rebrand myself, because remember, all our viewers who remember World of Sport, of course, which famously 60s showed amateur rugby league, and that's why it should be on in the 2010s or 2020s.
Good old Dickie there. You could do Dickie's hair at the moment.
Well, no, that's the thing. And he originally, in the earlier days, after Eamon Andrews left and he took over, was Richard Davis, until Jimmy Hill said they should rebrand him as Dickie. DD. Dickie Davis.
Who would have thought?
Coventry legend Jimmy Hill.
You'd sell the sport on a Dickie. Who would have thought?
Mr. Mathers there, speaking a lot of sense as ever, and always honest in what he said. I think we need to see him more on TV and radio, because he does speak honestly about the game. And I think what struck me was when speaking about the Warrington job, wasn't afraid to say, he's mates with Lee Breers, but perhaps he's not the man who can guarantee them a grand final victory, which is refreshing to hear from someone.
I think he's right as well that that is a high pressure job if that's your first one as a head coach. Because if you don't get it right, and you're not going to get any leeway for having been a legend, pulling on the shirt and dropping all those goals, where do you go if it doesn't work? And I think speaking to Sean Long the other week, he's seen as well that being an assistant under a regime like Richard Agar and Kevin Sinfield, where there is great experience there, he can bring something that is his style and stamp of play, but he doesn't need the pressure that goes with you're expected to win every week, and nobody has any time for a team that doesn't seem to be playing in an effusive style that is linked to the colour of a shirt, and it's a real pressure that goes way beyond whether you can coach or not. And I don't know whether Lee is at the time of his life where he would relish handling that and go on and be a great coach. I think that's why, again, the obvious emerging candidates are people who have got a winning record. Now, Sean Wayne's style of play may not suit some fans, but if it was successful, I think they would certainly put up with it in the short term. Brian McDermott wouldn't give explanatory interviews as to why he was doing what he was doing, but what he was doing would be generally successful. That's just how he operates. He wouldn't be flavour of the month at every fans forum, but that's not why he's there. He's there to win the games that matter, and his record says that he can do that. And that's why I threw Sean Edwards into the mix, because I think that there is a point in everybody's career where they do say, yeah, rugby union's been good to me. I've achieved a lot out of it. I've sort of enjoyed the roles and seen a little bit of the world. But I'm a league lad, and I'd like to go back. We know how close he was to pitching his flag to Wigan, and whatever happened there, we may never know. But as I say, his dad played at Warrington. I would love to see him back, and even talking to the Barrow guys, everybody's saying we need to do more to promote the game. We need to tell people that we're out there. We need to get personalities involved in the sport that people are going to want to report on. Well, with the greatest respect, Sean Edwards is one of those. And again, a touch taciturn, but I saw him give an interview in French the other day. And the fact that he was prepared to even basically learn the language to get his message over to the players tells you how thorough he is. And yes, you might have to break the bank to get him, but one thing we do know from Warrington is the one thing they will do is break the bank. So I'd throw him into the mix. I don't know what Brian Bevan would say about that, but clearly worthy of being a candidate, I would have said.
Two things, and you can tell this programme's unscripted. We haven't spoken to the Barrow people yet, so we don't know what they've said about promoting the game.
I suspect that when we speak to them, one of the things they'll tell us is that they're doing really well up there, but the sport as a whole needs better promotion. If I second guess what they might
imagine
say,
that's what they'd say. Yeah.
If we ask them that question, that's the kind of answer we might get.
Sean Edwards speak French with a Wigan accent. Because I know when you go to Rugby Union, you tend to lose the accent. Jason Robinson, Andy Farrell, Andrew, they don't sound like they're from Belle Isle and Wigan anymore.
I wouldn't like to rate his French. It sounded a lot better than any French I could do, but there was a certain twang about it, yes.
A bit like the English policeman in the Lower Officer Crabtree.
Yeah, I again wouldn't say that in front of Sean ever. But no, commendable that he was taking a training session whilst talking to his players in their native tongue, and it was clearly having an effect.
Hopefully, they're all COVID free. I mean, the sport's rubbish, but we don't want them.
One of the potential issues on the horizon is whether Toulouse and Catalan are going to have to base themselves here after the quarantine laws look like they're going to be amended, and that may cause an issue. So there's still some things to play out for sure.
Air corridors, and I don't understand any. I don't think anyone understands anything.
Tomorrow.
I think everyone's getting a bit overexcited at the minute. That everyone's going to be in a pub on, is it June 21st or something? Just calm down.
Calm down. That he's going to be out there.
Do you remember when we're going to say we're going to play at midnight because they could have a crowd, and then we ended the season without a crowd at a single game? So I think people just need to calm down. I know we all want whatever normal is, but just calm down a bit.
I think the encouraging thing is it looks as though we're going to get some sort of a crowd for the Challenge Cup final.
Yes.
Which, that's a major event on terrestrial television. Looks like we're going to get, a crowd at the grand final if things roll out. So, crowd at the Magic weekend. They're talking about how you can get a ticket. Well, that assumes that tickets are going to be on sale. So, yeah, let's make the most of it.
Magic weekend details snuck out at 1 o'clock. I'm really looking forward to see where if you'll play Huddersfield again. But apart from that, it is what it is. It's something to look forward to. We need all the things to look forward to that we can do, and certainly you can imagine that all those up in Newcastle will be very much looking forward to it if it goes ahead and if there's no restrictions, and everyone will have a great time as they always do up in the northeast.
And there's still hope, I think, that you might want to either have the Friday Night Lights fixture where Newcastle could be playing somebody like Bradford, whose fans we know travel, or possibly even be shoehorned into the Saturday and make that a 4-game scenario so that the people of Newcastle can go and watch their team at St James's Park, which, again, with the World Cup coming there, it's almost like the dots are starting to come together.
Well, one of the catalysts the World Cup is the Women's Super League season, which will be getting underway at some point in the near future. And the good news is that the game has been now classed as elite status, so they are allowed to train and get ready to play and so on and so forth. They haven't released the details of the format yet. If it's what I understand, it's good. It's going to be okay. Challenge Cup will go ahead. I don't know where the final is going to be played, but we'll see what happens with that. It's at least things are getting back on track somewhat, and the women need the games because the World Cup coming up and the Aussies are playing and the New Zealanders, and Canada are confident, and no one knows what's happening with Brazil. But we need to be ready because it's going to be that Canada game could be tough if they play as well as they talk a game. That could be a potential banana skin, but I'm very sure that the England coaching staff will be very much aware of that and don't need me to say that. Again,
without wishing to decry the efforts of any club that wishes to be part of Super League, I think this is a year where you go less, you go more intense, you keep the... there has to be top teams who have access to the best players. You only need to look at the roster of St Helens at the moment and know that for all the great work that's going on at York and Featherstone, they are not at the moment at that level. With it being a one-off World Cup year that we're hosting, I would actually, rather than looking to increase the league in the immediate short term, would actually decrease it. Let everybody play a series of really intense games, throw in some Yorkshire, Lancashire, put in maybe a couple of trials, and give them the best possible physical preparation they can have, and don't have weeks whereby you go, well, it won't be as tough this week, and that's just because we've got a World Cup. That is in no way to decry the development being done at some fabulous clubs.
It's not my place to say what I know, so I'm not going to say anything publicly because it's this is not a program to break confidences and things like that.
Or even news.
No, you'll find out things when you find them out. Although I do enjoy when people tell you who's going to play who at the Magic weekend before it gets released. That's always good.
That's what I call an exclusive.
I mean, it's a 1 in 11 chance, I guess. Is that right? Yeah.
But the fact is, it's not going to make any difference if you know now or next week, or you don't know what form any of the teams are going to be in. You don't know how the season's going to have panned out by then, or you don't even know if Steve Price is still going to be in a job by then, do you? So interesting that I think one of the other things Richard said, who is a serious thinker about the sport and always has been, is that he was saying that if Steve Price doesn't see out the season, that reflects on the players' mental attitude and not him. So the senior guys, Jack Hughes now the skipper instead of Chris Hill, there's going to be a lot of onus. I guess Greg Inglis is coming in not just to be the big superstar, but he does need to impart to the guys around him a winning mentality, which clearly he's had in his career.
We'll get Richard on again sooner rather than later because there's plenty of things I could think of that we didn't have time to ask him, like have you been in dressing rooms where the coach is leaving and how that changes the dynamic? Because he's now far away from the sport enough that he can say these things, which you can't say when you're a player, obviously. Do they talk at Warrington? Publicly, they'll say, "Oh no, no, 1955 has no relevance," but they must talk about it. It must have some bearing on what the players and the coaching staff think going into a season, because everybody talks about it. Remember the start of last season at the season launch podcast, Steve Price, is this your year? It is a thing.
I think the other thing as well is that it's a mutual decision and nobody's claiming it's anything other than that. But you look at the way Warrington finished the season last year and you could see why maybe the club can see some more change on the horizon. You look at Steve Price in this COVID world and, absolutely he'd want to get back home at an opportunity that would suit him, and clearly with the turnover of coaching staff in Australia, there will be a team that is looking for at least an assistant, and I'm not sure he'd walk straight into a head coaching role unless he finished here with a grand final. So it sort of works, but is it dead man's shoes? You just don't know, do you, that something, some motivation has gone out of the need to keep proving yourself. Absolutely can work the other way. Say at 2007 at Leeds, it clearly did. The willingness to want to win for Tony Smith was palpable throughout that year, and there was much celebrating from all when they did. But I just don't know with Warrington. There is it's not about the talent they've got access to. It's something that is imperceptible that isn't there, and you sometimes think if it's not there at the beginning of the season and the guy who's in charge of it is going, is it going to be there at the end of the season? I genuinely don't know. What
Warrington need, of course, is a netball team, because obviously, Leeds, Surrey the other night, that was good. I saw none of it. I just saw the result, but I've heard Surrey are good. I don't know why Saracens have got the Saracens Mavericks. Why aren't they just Saracens? Because that's already a daft name that has no geographical bearing on anything. I don't understand that. But
I have to say I have watched 3 games. I know no more rules than I did when I watched the first game.
You can't move, can you? Isn't that the rule with the ball?
No, if you've got it in your hands, you can't go for it's travelling or something. No. But the way it's presented to the non-aficionado is really good. It's fast, it's athletic, it's skillful. But the presentation, and probably because it's new to us, you find the commentators are really good, the analysts are really good, the in studio is really good. The building up of the duels between certain players is really good. I have enjoyed it, and I think you, as the youngsters say, you do have to have skin in the game to watch it in the first place. But I think once you watch it, it's very easy to captivate.
I've not quite got the bug yet, but I'm sure there's nothing else on,
There are lessons for Rugby League.
Well, but we said this forever on this programme. We're too insular. We need to look outside of our box to see what we can learn from other sports. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Well, now is the time. Now is the time to learn things.
What I think is interesting is we've tried to do some podcasts with different people and given them the space to talk about how they see their sport developing. And when we spoke to Wales, it was we're going to prioritise the women's game. When we spoke to Ontario, we're going to prioritise the Masters game. I think we've spoken to Whitehaven and Workington. Can't wait to speak to Barrow. But I think they'll stress that the community game is something that's really high up on their priority of maintaining that there is a presence in Cumbria that relates to people there, that there's an identity, and all of ththese things is more than just putting a team on the pitch, and there isn't one strategy that fits all, and I'm not sure we've been wide-eyed enough to take stuff like that. It wouldn't suit every club to have a netball franchise. But it wouldn't do any harm for a couple more rugby league clubs to be investigating other sports that they could lend their names to and spreading their influence and that way. And it may well be Warrington Wolves basketball team in the National Basketball League would be a fantastic avenue for them to appeal in their own area, but get the name and the brand better known outside of the traditional support base. You know, Hull is a fertile area for sport. You know, and anybody who carries that Hull badge, a boxer or a dart player, you know, there's a whole community that'll get behind them. And it may well be that we have to be more than just the 13 guys that run on a field every week and wear historic colours.
Up the Pirates. I think they're still around, the Hull Pirates. People listen to this
podcast. Up the pylons.
Well, yes. Well, they've been in trouble today, accused of hacking into Hull Chaos account. Have you seen this story today?
I have. I knew it was. They're not them.
No, them. I mean, it's the story of the day, that one. So, wasn't Keithley's website once taken over by terrorists or something?
It's something like that, yeah.
Something bizarre. I don't want Keithley to think I'm picking on them now, because I know some people are touchy about things and say people listen to the podcast but don't listen at the same time. I think that's the thing. I saw some people criticising Ontario's the theory in Ontario of going with masters as a way of growing the game, saying you should work with kids upwards. But it makes sense to me if you're in an alien area to the sport, if you get people who've got time and potentially money on their hands to get involved, why not do it that way? There's no right or wrong answer, and that might be the way forward in developing areas, as you mentioned 7s and 9s and things before.
I think the other thing about that is it's a way of creating an audience. So you do have players that play American football or Canadian football or, heaven forbid, rugby union who fall out of those games because there's a point where they can no longer play. Well, if yours the offering that says you don't need to change too much, but clearly that's something you enjoy and come along, and it's as much a social thing as it is, but you keep fit and you come with your mates, then, and if that's the way to grow the game in North America, who are we to tell them that they need to start with under 5s who don't even know what the shape of a rugby ball is? So no, it goes back to having a strategy where you can accommodate everything and everybody. I think wheelchair is a grossly underdeveloped area in terms of, I think once people get the idea that it's arguably the most accessible part of our entire sport. I think you mentioned that to Gareth Keir the other week, that you don't have to be disabled. You can play with your siblings and you play mixed sex. It's like why wouldn't you want to get involved with that? You see it. You'll go and watch it as a spectator. Some of the games between England and France that have determined World Cups, if they're still on YouTube, just watch them. I mean, they are astonishing. When you talk about going to iconic locations like the Copper Box when the World Cup comes around, if a club in the south of England decides wheelchair is the way that they're going to spread the word, and it's genuine rugby league. I think you've said that before. It's not a sop to. Here's a beanbag that looks a bit like a rugby ball and you can throw it forward, sideways, backwards, over your head, and it bears no relation to 6 tackles and crashing into everybody. Then, if they feel that's their USP, let them use it, and we should back it. And
it's the World Cup we are more likely to win than any other one. When I say we, I mean England, but
whoever wins, I think it's going to be it's going to open a lot of people's eyes, and we have to be brutally honest. You need to find access to funding these days, and as much as you can. And there are bigger pots and more varied pots of money out there for the variant types of the sport than there is for the more traditional ones. And sure, there's there's north-south divide money and northern powerhouse and the red wall or the blue wall or the China wall, I don't know, but actually it's limited. What isn't limited is health, general fitness, well-being, community involvement and spirit. And if that comes through your kids or your women or your girls or your wheelchair or your masters, who are we to say one variant or one form is predominant over another?
I mean, we were going to go to a training session last year, but obviously the COVID. But when everything's, I'm ready to play. I'm ready to have a go. I mean, I'm sure it'll be terrible, but I'm willing to have a go.
You got to be tough. You've got to be tough. I've seen
certainly.
the guy.
I'm screwed then.
The only thing I'd want to be doing is going in the opposite direction to somebody like James Simpson.
I mean, enough pain with my ankle, and I just fell over on that. It's no good.
He takes no prisoners.
No. Before I forget, before we go to Barrow,
Are we going to Barrow?
We're going to Barrow. I'm slightly concerned that we're, however far away from the start of the season, and no one knows where London are going to play their games. We know where Sheffield are now, and we'll have to get Liam on again, actually. It reminds me, I'll get in touch with him. Sheffield through no fault of their own. I'm not saying London situation is through any fault of their own, but they don't know where they're going to play their games.
I think they have put in this bid to the new Wimbledon. I think that is where they'd like to play, on the basis of the fact that it is everything you would want from a stadium. At the moment, it's over capacity for fans, but it's perfect for corporate, and you can build the fan element. But I believe there's some unusual ownership over that stadium, and it is a community facility, and trustees have got to vote for you to come in, and that's a more lengthy process than ringing up Ian Lanigan and saying, can we come and, well, not Wigan, clearly, because they don't own their own stadium, but you can't ring up Gary Hetherington and go, can we come every other Thursday? And he could make a decision relatively quickly. I think it is a little bit more complicated than that in Wimbledon, but I think London will end up playing there. And in terms of access, excellent, good, like that. I mean, there's a lot of hope that I had a concern, and I'm sure that Barrow will expound upon this, that the Championship was going to be two divisions within a division, that the ones that had tried to be in Super League were moving in a northerly direction, and those who hadn't were hoping to tread water and stay in the division because of what may or may not happen at the end of this year, were going in a southerly direction, and that gap was going to be really difficult to bridge. I don't know now. I think there's some real positivity in those lower reaches, that they can aspire to being at the top. And there's always the worry that somebody at the top overstretches a little bit and the fall is harder than the team that's taking it steadily and building smaller bridges like Sheffield. They know who they are. They know exactly what their identity is. They know when they're going to get back to the city of Sheffield, and it's taking longer than they would like it to, but they're building something. Whereas I think we've all waited a long time, but everybody is genuinely showing signs of that rare commodity in rugby league, of positivity, that they're going to be all right.
Well, I've got some negativity to come, so stay tuned for that. But first, let's head to Cumbria, the south bit, the bit you can see from Blackpool. It's Barrow and their chairman, Steve Neale, and their coach, who, following in the footsteps of Gary Schofield, who he had a decent record there until he got sacked. And he's had a much better record than him. It's Paul Crarey. Gentlemen, Steve, Paul, thanks for joining us on this edition of 4020 Not Live. I'll start with you, Paul. We're almost a year since the last matches. How ready are you to get back onto the field, get your men back onto the field?
We're absolutely flying, really. We're doing really well. Everyone's keen. We've come in with a purpose. We've got some great experienced players. Adam Warren, Sean Lump, Ben Harrison have come in this year. And, they've been great with us. They've bought into everything we've done. Very enthusiastic. We've got a great balance across the board, some good kids coming through, which is our plan, to keep bringing these kids through, and a mixture of players that have been around the Championship for a few years. So we're pretty excited, and training's been going really, really well.
And Steve, I'm guessing as much as the players are getting ready to get back on the pitch, you want to get fans back in the stadium and get some money back in.
Yeah, absolutely. A ray of hope yesterday that it's the uncertainty that kills you, and not knowing month to month when they're coming back. But we can live with a date wherever it is, and now it seems as though it's May the 17th. So for a limited crowd, and probably big enough for what we want, and then 21st of June hopefully for unlimited, unrestricted crowd. So it's been a long journey trying to get the club back onto the playing field.
We're still waiting some of the finer detail of what was announced yesterday, and there is some talk that capacity is based around seats rather than standing, and it may well be that standing areas they'll hold off because you can't socially distance them. Would that cause you a problem if that was the way it's operated to begin with?
Well, I've had a meeting last week with our local council, and that's one of the protocols that you've got to go through to get the approval to have spectators back into the ground. They've been on various courses, the local councils. I expect all of them have been on it, working out like a COVID calculation based on the surface area of your terracing and such like. So, as it happens, it's not too bad for us. It's come out about 2,800, which, when we've got average crowds of 1,400 and 1,500, we're quite happy with that. So even though the seating area will probably quarter because of, miss a row, a couple of people together and a couple of seats missing, etc. 2,800 for me, quite happy with that, to be honest. So hopefully we'll be able to, go with that capacity and work on filling the ground.
Before we sort of look forward to what we can expect from this season, both on and off, let's look back of how you've coped as a club with not effectively being open for close on a year, and then how do you deal with the playing staff when you can't be with them and you're monitoring them, I presume, at length, and then you bring them back in, you've really got to look after them. So it's sort of been impossible for us to understand what you must have gone through. But how hard has it been?
From a club point of view, obviously, the job retention scheme has been a lifesaver in terms of paying 80%, 70%, 60%, whatever it may be at the time of the wages. But we were very, very quick to be active and diversified into lots of other areas. You may have seen that we put a big beer garden on the pitch throughout the summer, and we had pop concerts, and probably the biggest pop concert in England, only a couple of thousand, but we were really proactive, and we've managed to actually come out of COVID better financially than we entered it. Obviously, as you say, the wage bill has been helped enormously by the government. So as a lot of the clubs may have felt sorry for themselves and felt that they were just going to rely on handouts and such like, but we were really proactive. Our sponsors, I must say, have been fantastic, almost to a man. They've kept the sponsorship deals from 2020 and not looked for refunds. And the same with the supporters. Again, they've been fantastic in terms of season ticket refunds. Obviously, one or two have asked for a refund. Some people are really, really struggling with their personal lives, but generally, we've been really well looked after by our fans and sponsors, government, and such like. So that for the club, we're stable, we're fine, and we'll go into this season with optimism off the field. Paul's probably the best one to answer, how the players have coped with it, and he's been in constant contact with them for the last 12 months and only really got them back in December. So I'll pass on to Paul for that one.
Yeah, I think we've done really well. We've got a great conditioner, Paddy Mayer, who's been around the professional football game for a long time, and Sean Riley, who's a new physio, has been brilliant with us, and we've had programs running for most of the year, thinking we're going to get back, but we never did get back. So, they've got programs to do away from the club. A lot of the lads have come in probably in better shape physically than they were last year. Probably lost a little bit of weight, and the muscle's gone a little bit because there's no gyms and stuff, but physically, aerobically, they're very good. So, they're probably itching to get back. It's been difficult. The club's done a brilliant job. I think we're one of the few teams that have been paid 100% of our wages through the pandemic, and that's credit to the board. The players have recognised this, and they've spoke to me about that when renegotiating contract deals. So it's been pretty easy, really, for our staff. We've been well looked after. Steve's very good. He's on the phone to me, probably sick of me most nights at 10 or 11 o'clock. I ring him, but he's working all day, and the board is probably one of the best boards I've worked under since I've been here, and I've been here quite a long time. They're so proactive, and it's probably the most difficult period, in the history of the game, this to get through it and come out the other end. And we're probably in pretty good shape financially, and with our playing group, to make a good challenge this year.
Got the Challenge Cup will be the first time we'll see many teams in action this year. What did you make of your particular draw?
I think it's always tough going to Oldham. It's a small ground and they're a very physical team, but we want to strive to be a championship club, and there was nothing between. I think we got beat by 4 points last year in a game against them, and we had a try which we should have scored in the dying seconds to win the game. So we know a lot of their players. They're probably, no disrespect, but they were like us, a bottom end championship team. Always struggling for financially, so they're always going to be around that. So we're going to go there and have a good shot. Will anybody be prepared after 12 months of not playing? Then we've had a graded return to play, contact wise, and everything's limited what we can do. We've gone from 3 sessions a week to 2, which is a Wednesday and Friday, whereas we normally go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and sometimes a Saturday morning. So, just to get back on the field's a massive plus for the game. And nobody knows what to expect. No matter what preparation you do, there's going to be no video. We can't look at video of them or anything like that. No friendlies before. So everybody's going into it real cold. So, the big plus is that we've got a game after a long break, but probably the downside is nobody knows what to expect in terms of your own playing group. And we're going to use it to have a look at some players and go with a very experienced team when we go to Oldham, because I think that's what we'll need in that game.
And it's not just the fact that you haven't played for 12 months, you've got new rules to play under as well.
Yeah, and we're actually practicing that at training and, repeat sets. We've done a lot of graded contact when we first come back. I think the block before Christmas, I think we did 5 or 6 weeks. It's really helped us. And, we went really hard, but with guidance off Sean and Paddy, who is, I think, he's a lecturer at one of the universities as well. So he's very astute. So, everything's been graded and we've come out the other end. We picked up a few niggles early on, 3 or 4 players early on when we started back, but we've got through that now. So, I think we'll be ready physically, but again, contact's a different thing and you can never emulate what's going to happen in a game, repeat set, stuff like that. And the new rules, we've got to get used to that. But we've got one of the referees coming down to do a session with us before we play Oldham, so that we know what to expect and how to adapt it, and if we need to change things and practice different things for different situations.
You mentioned the quality of the experienced players you've managed to attract, which will make you incredibly competitive in a division that almost splits into 2, and you'll be looking at ways to bridge that gap. But how have you managed to attract them? Because Barrow hasn't always been the easiest place to get players to come and play at.
Yeah, we've been lucky. Good news travels fast in Rugby League, but bad news travels faster. And, the club's been brilliant with the players. Jordan Warren's been here and he's been around a few clubs, and I spoke about him about making it his home and he needs to settle down and we had a good chat, and then he phones me and he says after he signed a 2-year deal, he said our Adam wants to come. So that was that. And then Sean Lunt rang me. I know Sean personally, and he said before he finishes he'd like to come up and play in Cumbria, and he'd like to come and play for me and the club. So we brought him up. Whether travel would be an issue, we didn't know, but we brought him up and he had a meeting with Steve and decided he wanted to go around again. And Ben Harrison, he's been out of the game a couple of years, and again I got a text one morning, and on Saturday morning it wasn't. He asked to come and see me and just said he wants to go around again and start playing again. So with Ben, we've given him an opportunity, and we'll see how he goes in the pre-season games. But in regards to training, they've been absolutely outstanding, coming in, working really hard, helping the other players. You can see them around the younger players and helping them. And they've had real leadership skills from them since they come in. So, we're pretty pleased that we got them. It is a difficult place to get players. For every 10 players we go after, we might get 1, but these 3 have knocked on our door. Martin Aspinwall's helped Martin come in as well. We've got Martin a job as an accountant, and he's actually moved up and settled here. So, word of mouth to these players, to other players in the game, is massive for us, and we've been really lucky in our recruitment.
And Steve, you've had no hesitation in backing Paul when he's come to you and said, "You're not going to believe this, but I've had Sean Lunt on the phone. What can we do?" And you backed him, which again any coach would just relish some chairman like that.
Yeah, absolutely. As Paul said, he's on the phone every bloody night. We work closely together. We identify, the makeup of the squad in terms of how many hookers we need, how many centres we need, wingers, etc. So we do that way back, probably June of the season before, and we analyse what we've got, who we want to keep, etc. So we kind of know where we are. Paul understands the budget. We know what we're playing with. So again, he doesn't go for the captain of Australia or anything like that. He's got to be realistic of what we can afford. As I said, off the pitch, we've done really well. We brought Ryan Shaw in as well. Paul forgot to mention him, but he's been around Super League, but he's a Barrow lad, you see, and he's come from Barrow Island and played some top teams and played at Ulkiana, a struggling team, but scored lots of tries. So again, Ben Harrison's a Barrow lad, so part of our job is actually improving the community game in the area as well. And if these players can come through, we've had a production line from our college team, which is equivalent to an academy team. Again, 4 or 5 of them have come through. Strong amateur game. So again, they've come through. So that makes it a little bit easier budget-wise to back Paul when I get phone calls from 1 or 2, star names really. And Ben Harrison's played for England and Ireland. Sean Lunt's played for England. Adam Wallen's been around Super League for a long time, as has Ryan Shaw. So we're delighted to back him. But we feel that we're at least a championship club. I've got ambition more than that. I don't see any reason why we can't be the answer to the Cumbrian. We couldn't be the Cumbrian solution to the Super League question, really. And we've got a lot of work to do, but we've made tremendous strides in the last 2 or 3 years. And part of it's going to be on the pitch, but we've been doing some great work off the pitch as well. And I'm really, really ambitious. So let's get a start, let's promote it, let's get the top end of Championship Stage 1, and then let's see where we are and go from there.
No pressure then, Paul. You've got to get this team into Super League then in 2 years.
Yeah.
I said 2 years.
Well, I just thought I'd put that in there.
Yeah. The thing is, Steve, he's got a vision for the club, and probably before we come in, it was probably 80% rugby and 20% business, but that's flipped on its head a little bit now. And we're roughly looking on a par of what we're doing on and off the field. The community is unbelievable what they're doing in the community. And it started with Joe Bullock. I think a few years ago, we started that with a woman called Nancy McKinnell. She helped me and Joe, and we got Joe in a few schools, but they've took it on tenfold now with Siona and Dennis Fair, who's ex-headmaster that's turned numerous schools around in the area. And Steve's got a great vision of where he wants to go, and he's like a steam train. Nothing stops him. But he's honest as well. The biggest thing is honesty for me, and he's pretty honest, and so are all the other board, and they'll tell you how they feel. We have good open meetings, and it's and probably Barrow it's not like coaching another club. It's all about the community, and like I say, Barrow lads coming back to play that have been at top level, and wanting to come back and play for the club, and it's massive strides from us on what we're trying to do, and we'll burst out on the scene, whenever it may be. It might be this year, it might be whatever, but we'll eventually get to where we want to go. I can just feel it, and there's a bit of a buzz about the place.
One of the challenges, Steve, in this hopefully soon to be post-COVID world will be getting people back through the turnstiles. Obviously, first with reduced numbers, but then as many as we can get. What's your aim? What are your strategies to get people back through the turnstiles?
Well, it's just so disappointing that last year ended prematurely, because we had big plans then, and they're probably going to be repeated, really. But we're definitely targeting the youngsters in the area. We had 12,000 season tickets distributed in South Cumbria last year, and that's going to be repeated. But we're going to target the whole of South Cumbria and the Lake District. There's a tourist market there that's untapped, really. There's only so many walks you can do, and so many trips on the lake you can do. And if people are here for a fortnight, I want to get in the hotels and such like, and I'll bring them down for free. I want to show them what Rugby League's all about. Some people who have perhaps never seen the game, some I don't know if we're allowed foreign tourists this year, but that'll be the long-term plan, just to get people down into Barrow. There'll be new fans to the game, and I want our attendances to totally explode. I want to work with sponsors, and there may well be an amount of free tickets going around, but I've been to Toronto And I know Toronto, for whatever reason, haven't made the start line this year, but they were a fine example of building a crowd from absolutely nothing. And when I went over there in, just the week before they got promoted, before the playoffs, we went over, there was 10,000 in the ground, and 10,000 people cheering on a team like Toronto after 2 or 3 years of existence. We've been around for 140 years now. We need to make inroads and build our crowds back up. We did have big crowds there, big-ish 80s, obviously very big 50s, but the time is now for us to re-establish that, and that's our number one KPI for me anyway, is to grow the crowds. If we grow the crowds, everything else will happen. The team will improve, the sponsors will come, the broadcasting deals will be better, we'll be on TV more, because everyone likes an atmosphere in the ground. So that for me, I've been trying to educate the board of where our focus is, and it is absolutely growing crowds. And I think that's the vision of the RFL as well. Crowds have got to grow.
It's interesting how you see your identity, because clearly you're linked to Cumbria. You've said you think you can be the answer to the Cumbrian problem. You're talking about the area of the lakes, but actually you are geographically the only team that is in Lancashire. So are you making a conscious effort to change your identity in some way to appeal to a new audience?
Well, officially we're in Cumbria. We've been in Cumbria since 1972 or whenever it was, but yeah, we've still got an LA postcode. A lot, me and Paul were both born in Lancashire, but born in the area. So we're hybrid, really. But I think most people have come to terms with the fact that we are Cumbrian now. So I mean, it doesn't really matter what the borders are. The fact is that there's an untapped market there, and we want people to come and watch Barrow Raiders, from as far east as Kendal, and let's get tapped into the Milliman above, and get the people down to Craven Park and enjoy Barrow Raiders and enjoy Rugby League, really. So I'm not too bothered whether I'm Cumbrian or Lancastrian or whatever, but I just want people to watch the team.
In terms of attracting them in the first place, how does streaming work for you? Because clearly it's a vogue topic at the moment. It's a way of perhaps generating some revenue before crowds are back in. What would your strategy be on that? Would you offer some games for free, even if it meant that you weren't getting income? Or do you think you have to start by charging a nominal fee? What would be your ideal, do you think?
Well, obviously, if it's behind closed doors, I mean, that decision's already been made. There is a cost that the RFL are imposing, through the hourly channels. I think it's £4.95 on the day, and £4.95 early bird, £10 on the day, I think. So that decision's been taken out of our hands. But I'm a big believer in getting our product out there. Sky TV have had the rights to the Championship, but only really showed the Blackpool Bash and the playoffs. But I believe we've got a fantastic product below Super League. And if you could go almost down like the old Rugby League Raw type programme and behind the scenes and such, I think we've got something that could be sold. But I'm happy to get it out there. It's a big secret sometimes how good Rugby League is. And for me, I don't care about, affecting attendances in that way. I don't believe that. It hasn't harmed Premier League football by having wall-to-wall coverage. And the early days in the early 90s when Sky came along and the Monday Night Football and Super Sunday and all this, and, gone are the days of 2 games on Match of the Day on a Saturday night. So it didn't harm football, and I don't think it'll harm Rugby League. And I think I don't think you can get a bad game with Rugby League. I can watch under 8s, I can watch an amateur game, I can watch League One, I can watch Super League or State of Origin. All the way through the ranges, I still think it's an entertaining product, and I certainly believe that League One has got a lot to offer, and I want to get it out to as many viewers and as many people as possible, and if they enjoy the product, they might end up at one of my turnstiles the week later.
Barrow still holders of the League One Cup, the iPro Cup, because it hasn't been played for since you won it, Paul. That was an entertaining game in Blackpool. What are your memories of that one?
Yeah, I thought it was a great experience for the lads. We just got off a flight, I think, from Toronto on the Monday, Tuesday morning, and we had a bit of jet lag, and we went into that game pretty cold. And I think we'd played Keighley midweek Leeds Rhinos, got on a flight to Toronto, come back from Toronto, so it was a hectic schedule. But I think we had nearly 1,000 Barrow fans at that game, and we managed to pip it back end of the game. So, and I think we should, it was a good spectacle for TV. We played in the Championship Big Bash as well, which is a great experience for the players and on TV, and it comes across well on TV. There's some great characters in the Championship, some all stages and some good young players. So there's a recipe for a good product, like Steve says. But we've got to market a little bit better, I think, the game in whole. I mean, Super League's coming back in a few weeks, and there's not much there to say. We're talking about at work today. People asking me when Super League's back, it should be all over the place. And I think if we can market Championship and Championship 1 and start showing it, I think people will start watching it.
Do you think the Championship is 2 divisions within one? I mean, clearly we've seen the teams that wanted a Super League franchise and some of the signings that they've made. And as you say, the quality in the Championship will be exceptional this year. Do you see yourselves as having to bridge a gap, or are we reading too much into that, do you think?
Well, I think it's a financial thing. I think you can go in with a healthy squad, but a small squad. And like I think we were 3 points from staying up. Drawing with Sheffield, things like that. But it was injuries that got us. And at the time, we weren't in a financial position to sustain or bring players in to keep us in the division. I think if we had been, which we are getting to that point now, we probably would have stayed up. And that's the same with a lot of the teams. You're around that bottom 4 or 5 year in, year out. Sometimes, or with a bit of bad luck, you can go down. And the year before, we managed to stay up, beating Leeds and Tudors. Even last year when we went down, or the year before, we got beat by a point at Lee, and you get Championship 1 teams going there and getting beat by 60-odd points. And, the star-studded these teams and spent a lot of money, as it's shown, getting the Super League. So it's the financial, constraints that hold you back, I think. But if you can get your finances right off the field and everything right off the field, then you've got a chance of staying up. And that's what we're trying to do.
In terms of governance, obviously that's another area that a lot of people are talking about at the moment. I mean, would you like to see the RFL and Super League come together, and you talk about how we market the sport, do it as a whole rather than in fractured bits?
Yeah, definitely. I think it should be the whole game. I just think as well in the Championship, I think we got 200 or 150,000 when we got promoted, and the teams at the top of the Championship are getting 750,000. So, you're behind the 8 ball to start with, and you're building a squad later. If everyone was on the same amount of money, the pool of players will be spread out evenly across the board, and you get a more even product. Just for example, we went to Featherstone last year, we were star-studded, unbeaten in the competition in the Championship, and we got beat on the bell there, where we could have had a penalty later on in the game to get us 2 points to get a draw, and we're there or thereabouts. It's just the financial constraints hold us back when. If it was a level across the board, so everybody in the Championship got the same money, I think personally should be 2 divisions, Super League and the Championship, like the old, when we used to play, it was a stone's bit of Championship and the Championship below. And I think we maybe could go back to that and have a bigger pool of games and have it televised across the board. But again, it's the money side of it that needs balancing out. And I think over the next few years, if Sky reduce what money they're putting in, I think it might go a little bit to an even keel.
And in terms of things like developing the club and new audiences, how important are things like a women's section, PDRL, LDRL? Some of the clubs we've been talking to are conscious of the fact that their offer needs to be as wide as possible. Masters Rugby League, I know is very popular in the Cumbrian area. Are you looking to expand the club that way?
Yeah,
well, I think Steve can answer that one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all part of our development plan with the community. We've been working very closely with Barrow Raiders. They've had games at Craven Park, and obviously the pandemic stopped that. But they were due to play some games last season, and our relationship is becoming closer and closer with them. Watch this space really on that, but things will develop with Barrow Raiders. Masters again. There's a strong Masters game in Barrow. 3 or 4 teams have sprung up. We've had games again on our pitch. So we've got a very, very strong relationship, probably as good as ever. Probably agree with me with the community clubs, and Masters is all part of that. So we've been putting a development plan together to not only grow Barrow Raiders, but we acknowledge that we've got to grow the game in the area. So not just Masters, not just ladies. We feel, there's a place for tag. People could be put off by rugby league because it is intense, it is tough, even at kids level. But if we offered them a tag, we would keep people in the game, and it's enjoyable. So there's got to be a way to play rugby league for everyone. It's not just about the physicality of it all. It's a fantastic game. So we're trying to get our numbers up in any way we can, and we're working very closely with the district league to increase those numbers, and ladies, masters, community club increases, small-sided games even, 7-a-side, 10-a-side. If some of the teams are struggling to get, regular 17-man squads, let's just play 10-a-side and build ourselves back up. And so, as I say, we've been working closely, but we've been putting together development plans. We've also got a vision of an academy and a Super League academy at that. And we don't want to pillage the game locally. We want to build the game up so that, they can afford to lose, 20, 25 quality youngsters, and they'll be better for the experience. Some of them will become professional players, and some of them will end up back at the community clubs playing National League rugby. So we're all over everything like that, and I think that's where we've made strides in certainly in the last couple of years.
Our man Schofield always tells us about the strength of the game up in Cumbria, Paul. How important are those links between the professional sides and the community clubs?
Massive, really. I mean, we're running a Jets program for kids, and we've got 185 kids on the program, which is massive for us. And then we have a game-based program for over 16s to 17s, which probably have 36, 38 players on that. And then we have academy running, which is under 19s. And from that, I think we've got 32 players signed on for that. So the junior section of our club has been massive. We've signed a player every year from the academy. Ryan Johnson was the first. He's got the number 7 shirt at the club now. Jake Carter, another one that's come through the system. Adam Ford, who was at Wigan as a junior, and then he come back. We signed him. And there's another kid on our radar now, Connor Terrell, another one was signed, was with our academy, picked up by Saints, broke his foot, got a job, and I spoke to him about a contract. Now he's signed for us, scored a try at Featherstone, 19 years of age. So, we're very proactive and we always have been in the 5 or 6 years I've been here, setting up that academy and that development. We have a coach in the coaches, which is locally. We've had 28 coaches on that, and some sports leaders, girls on that program, 5 or 6 of them as well. So, there's a lot of things we're doing, and that probably needs to be shouted from the rooftops, really, because it's massive in what we're doing. And we've worked with Kells Rugby League. Coaches have come down, which is, up the other end of Cumbria, up West Cumbria. So, they come down, watch training sessions, and I've been up there, done work for Egremont and also Kells. So, we do go out of our way to, to support Cumbria. I've coached probably Cumbria amateurs, and I've coached, the current coach of the Cumbria professional side. So, I'm well versed in Cumbrian Rugby League, and you've got to understand it. It's vast, the area. So for me to get to Whitehaven is probably an hour and 10 minutes to work it into an hour and a half. But it's still a close knit community. I know all the coaches up there, and I get on with them all, and they ring us for advice and stuff. So, really good.
In terms of facilities, how's the ground looking? Is that part of your plans as well, to develop that at some stage?
Yeah, absolutely. We probably acknowledge that's, one. I'm not saying a failing. It's perfectly adequate for Championship rugby. 5,000-6,000 capacity. But if we have got ambitions to go higher than that, then we need to either improve what we've got or to consider a new venue. And both of those options we're talking about at the moment. So that there's nothing firm in terms of a new ground, but we are talking with the council officials. There's levelling up funding that's coming, north-south divide, etc. And 25 million's found its way into Barrow for development, and there could well be some more on the horizon. So we're working very closely with the local council at the moment, and they're proactive in terms of wanting a facility, a stadium, fit for the 21st century. What we've got was opened in 1931, so probably close to 90 years, isn't it? So since it was open, so and it's showing its age at times. There's, as I said, it's perfectly adequate, but it's a never-ending journey of repairs, unfortunately, and it's no oddsoul, so it's not that vast. But every year I've got to find a budget just to stand still, and if there isn't a new stadium on the horizon, then I've got to think really seriously about improving what we've got. There's some good examples of improving what you've got. I like Featherstone, what they've done. They've got a really nice ground now, and it was probably arguably in the 80s worse than Craven Park. Basic, but now they've got that stand down from Scarborough and some good hospitality facilities in there. So you look on with envy really at what they've done, but they show that it can be done. And then there's other clubs like York who have gone the other way with a new stadium, and fantastic from the outside looking in. It looks a fantastic facility. So one or two, either of those options is certainly something on my radar, and we acknowledge that we want to push forward, and that's all part of it. There's no good just having a good team. We've got to make our facilities fit for purpose as well.
I guess to sum things up as we run out of time, things then going forward, positive both on and off the field at Barrow.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
You mentioned coach of the Cumbrian professional team. How much would it help you if you had a regular fixture once a year that Cumbria came together either as a trial for an international team to play in, or we started getting back to overseas teams playing a Cumbrian side as a warm-up? Would that help you on all manner of levels?
Yeah, we've got some great players that play, and the regular players as well that play. I think we played Tonga. We beat them with Fuimoimo at his peak and Fletti Mateo, all them in. And then we played England for the Gary Purdom game after the shootings. I think there was 6,000 in, where we drew with England 18-all. I think we played America before they played England at Craven Park, and we beat them 72-0. Matthew Elliott was the coach there. That was a mixture of Championship and Championship 1 and Super League players playing for us. Carl Amor, Eddie Gardner, regular players that turned up. I think Eddie, before we played England, he didn't get picked for the grand final, one of the games, phoned me up and said, I haven't met the team. Is it all right if I drive up tomorrow morning to met the team? And so I think it was against England he played that game. So, we've got a great bunch of players that are close-knit, and we pulled off some great results. The only time we got beat, I think, was England Knights, and I think we threw intercept on 67 minutes, which took the game away from us. So we've been very competitive, but we seem to get a game when there's a World Cup warm-up on or things like that. But we are capable of we've got players. Morgan Knowles, I know Morgan personally, he's killing it for St Helens. Players like that, Calais, all the lads we've got, the Lunty and all them, they could go and play against any team, in the world and put on a show. So we'd like a regular fixture, and I think it'd be great if Yorkshire, Lancashire and Cumbria played, around robin mid-season, to promote the game in different counties, so the counties can come together and get to one venue, and would get some huge crowds. And the more we do them sort of games, the more the game will grow in Cumbria and Lancashire and in Yorkshire, and people will have an affinity with supporting Cumbria, with supporting Lancashire and supporting Yorkshire, rather than just supporting their own team.
Excellent stuff. Paul, Steve, thank you very much for your time this evening. Very best of luck for the season on and off the field, and hopefully we'll see Barrow in Super League in a few years' time.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're wrong. I've seen load of Masters teams with older guys than those two. But actually, normal teams, no, nobody's as old as those two as an halfback pairing. No, they are. They still. I know them personally. I know I've played alongside both of them when I was playing myself. But yeah, they are. They're good guys and they train well. They keep themselves in good shape. They're not just guys that we wheel out in the Zimmer frames for a game day. They train hard as well, and they're a good influence on those around them. When you look out before you start in fields, the two guys either running round or kicking balls over posts. So those two. So they're such a good influence, and they make my job a bit easier, really. When you're bringing in younger lads, unproven guys, they can just look straight over at those two. Be dead easy for them to just clock in, clock out, pick the money up and go, but that's not what they're like. That's why they're still going, because they look after themselves. They still go hard in training, and they're really good for what we're about. And obviously, I know they can't go on forever, but before lockdown, there weren't many halfback pairings that were doing as well as them, and it remains to be seen whether that enforced time off will be a help or a hindrance to them. But going off pre-season, they're both in good condition. Both look good when you do the opposed stuff, so I've no reason to think they'll be any worse than last year. They're not getting any younger, obviously, so that never helps. But yeah, listen, they're both good guys to have around, and they set a good example for the younger guys and everybody. So at the moment, they're such a good influence for us. Yeah, reason on squad number bit is we had to save money on kit. So that, because we lost a 9, we can then scrub his name off and put Butterworth's on it. No, we obviously Dom Speakman went. Dom Speakman's a really good player, and he was really good for us. But just through COVID and his gym opening and closing and people leaving on him and stuff, he had to just concentrate on that. He couldn't commit to doing pre-season and playing a full season. So we had to act on that one. Such a vital position for you. So when I started looking around and inquiring, I noticed that he weren't getting a look in at Huddersfield. I wasn't quite sure why. So once I inquired, I worked out he didn't quite fit in the plans, and then we moved and acted on it. And he's in a similar mould to Dom. He's not just a guy that'll you won't notice, where he just makes 50 tackles a game, passes the ball on. He likes to try things and do things. I think Finney especially would be good for him. Sort of picking and choosing when you play some of the plays that you might do, rather than just doing them all the time. Maybe that's where he's fallen short a little bit. He's maybe trying too hard when he gets the opportunities. But just as he's kept training week after week, he's got better. He's been a bit more selective on when he plays and when he runs and stuff like that. But he's certainly got something about him, that's for sure. He's already got a good highlights reel because he tries quite a lot. But he's got some really good skill, like his passing, kick out of dummy half, and he's got a knack of scoring and creating stuff. So we've got another 9, Sam Day, who likes to score. Really good runner. I think those two will complement each other well. I think Reese is the thing I like about Reese is it's not just he's played 1 or 2 Super League and that's it, and he's just an academy guy. He's played at Batley before, and he's already played at this level and shown he can do it. And I think I like that part of it, rather than just getting an academy lad who you're never quite sure what they're going to be like against blokes. Reese has already proven he can do it. Nonsense. What an absolute nonsense of a rule that is. No, I don't think we'll see it. I don't think you'll see many of them. I mean, if you get to the point where you've been stuck in your 20 on tackle 5, you obviously get someone's kicking out of the 20 and it might randomly go in, but it takes some balls for someone to do it, sort of tackle 1 or 2, wouldn't it? Because generally after that you're out of your 20. So you'd have to be a really early tackle count kick to do it, and then nail it to the opposition's 40. So the only time I think you could possibly see it is later in a game when someone's chasing it. But even then, I think you might see one of them all season. So what the point of that rule is, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, we didn't want that one really. If you're looking at the draws, you didn't want London, West Wales, or any Cumbrian ones. You just didn't want the trip up on the bus with your face masks on, all spread out. But that's what we've got. Someone told me out of the last 15 years they've drawn Whitehaven away something like 8 or 9 times, so it were probably to be expected anyway. Obviously, we went there on a cold, wet Wednesday night and we did a job. So we're hoping that on a lovely, warm, breezy Sunday afternoon we can do the same.
Now what I've snuck in there was Lee Greenwood, who I spoke to last week. Although you can't hear my voice because I can't work out how to record from Zoom when they don't allow you to record.
Right.
The coach of Dewsbury. And I spoke earlier today to Craig Linkard.
Oh, was that good?
Which will be, I'll put that up as a video later this week because it was only a couple of minutes. I only asked a couple of questions because Radio Leeds asked all the best questions and I didn't want to repeat them. Yeah, the 2040 kick. Obviously, you could change the name of the magazine, could change the name of this TV station. It's not
going to be happening.
It's rubbish, isn't it? No one likes it. No one's going to do it. Does anyone have the balls to upset their coach and do it? That's the big question this year. And I think the answer is no. There's
going to be somebody who's under extreme pressure on their own line late in a game that needs something, a magic play that might go for it. But it's going to be so much the exception rather than... I mean, I noticed that when I was watching the Indigenous Maori game, and there's already calls for 40-metre drop goals. Go over the two, set it up for the 2-point drop. No, it's Australia, not for the 2-point drop goal. But never happened. It's a very rare skill, and to pull it off when there's 6 people bearing down is almost impossible. So 2040 fine, but we ain't going to be holding our breath to see it happen.
Questions to ask 21 years later. The World Cup in 2000, right? The New Zealand Maori.
I remember. Yeah.
Why wasn't there an Australian Indigenous team in the World Cup if we had the Maori in there?
Well, we had an Emerging Nations World Cup, and Bala played, which had already been well emerged as far as I could tell. So who knows?
Rugby League. Making it up as we go along since 1895. That should be the strap line. Get on your website, Rugby Football League.
You can have that for free.
Yeah, you can have that one. And what we should do is actually sue the Australians because obviously, one, we know that we owned the trademark to Rugby World Cup. I don't know, we gave it up, didn't we, or whatever happened. But we used to call our competition, because I've been looking through some old programs again, in the 60s, the Northern Rugby League, the NRL. That was us.
There you go.
Let's get some money off the Australians. Peter V'landys, pony up your cash.
Yeah, get your wallet out and pass them over.
So, I mean, I hope we don't upset the RFL, but we can upset the Australians. That's all right.
Yes, please.
Not going to be on their podcast, are we? So we're not going to ask Peter V'landys.
Well, you say that. Hypothetic Rugby League.
Oh, well, apart from them, yeah. I need to get back in touch with them because they asked me ages ago about something, and I've got a couple of scenarios in my mind of things, but then I have to think about how would they go on, and I'd just do it streamers conscious.
It'd be Don Fox, wouldn't it? And that.
Well, I've got 3 now because I've thought of another one. So there's that one, but actually that's easy because eventually the money runs out and it goes on from what happened. So that doesn't change anything, sadly. Although we would have won, both.
The double, which.
So that would have been good, but I don't think it changes anything. So then you've got either what if they all merge? What if Super League goes ahead with the teams that were planned? What happens then? So that would be one. Other what if scenarios. What if John Lomu had signed for Wakefield in 2000? Would have gone skiing quicker. And the other obvious one is what if we lose the £1 million game? But again, the answer to that is obvious. And I think even if the other team had won that game, I don't think anything would have changed with that scenario either. So I might have to think about what would have happened if Wakefield, Castlewood and Featherstone had become. So you've got 3 teams in the Wakefield district. You call them Wakefield Trinity and see what happens from there. But I have to get back to them and think. I'm sure I can think of it. It's great. Is it what if? The
sport of missed opportunity.
I mean, there's the other one for the RFL if you're listening. And this is just based on your, should rebrand it, call it Huddersfield. And then people say, well, no, that was just where it's just where they met. It's like, God, I'm not being serious.
It's good debate. There's nothing better than a mass debate about rugby league.
No.
That's another one that the RFL could have.
If you're listening, RFL Marketing Department, we're available.
I think after that last one we've sacked.
We'll never be allowed. I mean, I've got my accreditation, so hopefully... well, I've got the email. I've not got the thing to wear around my neck when we're allowed back into grounds, but hopefully they'll let us in.
We might just get an Our League accreditation and be able to watch a game from our screen.
And if you are a rugby league club and you have got my email address, feel free to invite me to your media days because I'm happy to go along and ask 2 questions. I'm more than happy to do that. That's why Dewsbury and Batley will be on our channel this week, and that's why other clubs will not be. So, just in case you're wondering, dear listener at home, is there anything else, Phil, or are we done? I think I can't think of anything else that's happened.
No, nothing that haven't been covered by our brilliant guests.
No. No.
We will get back to talking about games when we've got games to talk about.
We were, we're not the number 1 podcast on iTunes anymore. We're behind Brian Moore and other things. So we need to up our game again. But that's down to you, the listener and viewer, to tell all of your friends to download our podcast. You don't have to listen to it. Just tell them to subscribe. Put it on in the background on YouTube and get our numbers up. Because it's all about lies, damn lies, and viewing figures.
Yes.
That's how it works. And when the viewing figures come out for the NRL All-Star game, and as Phil said, about 4 people watched it, and you think, well, but it doesn't matter. People need to get into their minds that the NRL, as much as we know it's the top level of rugby league in the world and whatever, it's like Super Rugby, brackets union, like the basketball or whatever. It's just filler. Just filler on Sky.
Jonathan Thurston's picture is not on every wall in this country. He could walk into a pub if only they were open and have to buy his own drink.
Unlike Gary Schofield. I'm assuming he's been ringing you. How is it?
Oh, he's planning the first party on June the whenever it is.
Coming to barbecue.
Yes, bring a bottle.
Socially distanced.
He's had his latest operation, which went okay, and it's been monitored over the next couple of weeks or so, and seems quite sprightly for the young fella.
Well, the people want to know. You see, they are concerned. So when's he coming back? I mean, last week they're saying, "Oh, it's great, Mark's back." Now where's Scully?
Yeah.
Now this year they're saying, "Oh, where's Mark? Bring him back." You can't have everything.
He's at Ellen Road tonight.
He's at Ellen Road. Well, they've won.
Have they?
Yeah, I mean, so that it's the other week when the boxing fella lost and Leeds United lost. It was like, oh, doom and gloom. And now Leeds United have won, so they're back again.
Back.
Yeah, until next week. But and we'll be back probably next week. I'll have to find some guests because I haven't got any booked yet. But we'll get some people on. We'll talk rugby league and we'll enjoy ourselves because what else is there to do?
Exactly.
Buy the magazine, and we'll
thank you for all of the people that read a feature in The Guardian this week about Rugby League magazines and subscribed on the back of it. That is extremely muchly appreciated. But I would like to dedicate this programme to Matt King. I know we started with it. He's at the forefront of a lot of people's thoughts tonight. He's a bloke who made the difference. And if you were fortunate enough to come into contact with him and listen to his astonishing story, then we will miss him and people like him, particularly at this time. The book did go out of print. I think now there'll be some serious discussions that we have to bring it back because it's the least we owe him.